So let's talk about some of the negative things that I can't stand about living in Fort Lauderdale. And if this is your first time checking out the channel, welcome. And if you're not subscribed, you're gonna wanna go ahead and do that because I'm making new videos every week about what it's like to move to and live in Fort Lauderdale and really all of South Florida. And I am a licensed realtor here in Florida, and my goal is to make these videos to give you something that I didn't have when I moved down here 4 years ago. And just as much as I love making these videos, I love even more to help you with your real estate needs and help you with your goals of moving down here. So however I can do that, I'm leaving my number and email on the screen. Feel free to give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email at any time, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. So the thumbnail may have been a little clickbaity. I don't actually hate living in Fort Lauderdale. I don't know many people who move down to Florida and really just despise it, except for maybe some of the natives who have been here their whole lives and now they're ready for a change. But that's besides the point. So there are definitely some negative things about living down here that I've spoken about in other videos. I kind of wanted to refresh, make a new video for some of the people who haven't seen the older ones, and maybe add some new things to the list. And you're going to want to make sure to stay to the end because the last one could be very important for you and for your dog. So getting right into it, let's get started with number one, and that's going to be commuting. And commuting could mean a bunch of things. It could just mean how long it takes for you to commute from your house to your job or from where you live to another city. It could be the lack of public transportation, the fact that we don't really have like a great train or light rail system here. It's the lack of highways and also the horrible drivers that you have to deal with. But commuting as a whole is just not fun down here. It's not easy. There definitely isn't that many highways, and so a majority of the driving is done on the main streets of all the cities down here. Unless you're going out of the area, if you're going to Miami or Palm Beach County, obviously you'll take the highways. But getting east and west, it just feels like it takes so long because you're dealing with constant traffic lights, and sometimes you get stuck at the train. And South Florida just really is like a driving area. It's a driving metro area. Like I had mentioned, the public transportation system, aside from the buses, if you live in the city, the busing system is okay. You have the Bright Line, which takes you north and south. But as far as like a system to get you around the whole metro area, that's pretty much non-existent. And some of you guys are coming from Chicago and New York, where your public transportation is amazing. You just have to be prepared that you're not going to have that down here. Just to give you an example, I live maybe about 7 or 8 miles from downtown Fort Lauderdale, and there's been times where it's taken me almost 40 minutes to get there. I live east, so if I have to get to a highway, it may take me 15 minutes just to get to a highway, and then another 15 minutes to get downtown, and then another maybe 5 once I get off the highway to actually get to where I need to go. So sometimes it's just not even worth taking the highway. And the thing is that there's just traffic all day here. So it's not like your typical rush hours and then throughout the day it's kind of spaced out and you have that freedom to just drive. It's pretty much steady all day here. I remember one time I was, my friends were visiting and I took them to Hollywood Beach. It was maybe around 11 a.m. or something. And from North Fort Lauderdale, it took us 40 minutes to get down to Hollywood Beach. If you're used to living in an area with a really good highway system, really good public transportation, it's just something you're going to want to prepare yourself to not have when you move down here. All right, number 2, it's extremely flat down here. So maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't. I didn't really think about it when I was moving down here, but everywhere else that I've lived, whether it was Colorado or New Jersey, there was either mountains or hills. And I like to hike. I definitely like hiking. I used to hike in Garrett Mountain in Paterson, New Jersey, and I used to run that mountain, believe it or not. And I used to like that. It felt like it gave me a challenge. Well, down here, you don't have that. You do have options for hiking in some of the parks down here. It's just not the same. The atmosphere is kind of the same, It feels very wooded and like you're in the mountains, but it's flat. I guess, it is what it is. We are at sea level down here. But another thing that kind of sucks about it being so flat out here is you don't really get good views of anything. I mean, unless you're in like a high-rise building and, you're on a high floor, maybe you'll get a good view of the city. Maybe you'll get a good view of the beach. But just from being outside, you don't really get good views of anything out here. And I always say that the best view of downtown Fort Lauderdale comes from a highway ramp where you're, up in the air a little bit. That's probably the best view of the city, is when you're driving from 595 and getting on I-95. And just to kind of give you an idea of how flat it is down here, our highest elevation is 29 feet, and that's in Pine Island in Davie. So hardly anything. It's a tiny molehill, if you even want to call it that. So number 2, extremely flat landscape. Number 3, the summertime. So this one may be obvious to a lot of you. It's hot in the summers. We get it. This summer especially, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But some people actually think that Florida is just pretty steady all year long, that it's just hot, which is true. But the summer times are extremely hot, extremely humid, and it rains pretty much every day. I mean, this bench that I'm sitting on is soaked. And I mean, I have something under me. I'm not sitting on a wet bench, but the sky is not one cloud in the sky. It shows no rain in the weather, but it's just something when you move down here that you have to plan for every single day, especially in the summertime, is rain at some point. And it usually comes right around the rush hour, the afternoon rush hour drive, and I mean, it gets brutal, like hurricane conditions. And just the overall bad thing about the summertime is just that you don't get to do a lot of the things that you would like to do over the summer. And this summer in particular, it's been extremely hot. I mean, luckily there's a little bit of a breeze right now. I tried recording this video yesterday. It was like 106 degrees, 60 or 70% humidity. I mean, I was just running out of breath just talking. I'm not sweating too bad right now. I am under an awning of some sort, so I am kind of being blocked by the sun. But it gets extreme out here in the summers. This is my 4th summer living out here, and this is by far the worst one in terms of heat, humidity, and rain. And when it comes to humidity, it could be 10 o'clock at night, pitch black outside. The temperature may say 83 degrees, but the humidity is 90%. So it's gonna feel like it's well into the 90s. And when it's that hot and you don't have the sun hitting you, it's just not a good feeling. So again, this may have been an obvious one, that the summers are extremely hot, but believe it or not, some people don't know that it gets that much hotter over the summertime. And tying number 3 into number 4 is gonna be the lack of seasons. And again, like I said, some people know that the summer is extremely hot. Some people think it's just steady all year long, so you already maybe know that there is a lack of seasons. But believe it or not, in Florida, the further north you go, you actually do have more of a seasonal change. And it's not so much that the seasons don't change down here, but it's not really enough to take notice. It basically goes from really hot to just hot. And so right now we're in the really hot phase. And then maybe in September, October, it's just gonna be hot, and we'll maybe get a few weeks out of the year where the temperatures get in the 60s in January, December, January, or February, and in the mornings they'll be in the 40s. So that's nice, but I guess when I say lack of seasons, I can also say that you don't really have a perception of time living out here because you don't have those seasonal changes. So it just kind of drags out the whole year because the temperature is the same. I mean, it's just hot all year, so there's really no perception of time living down here. I mean, it could be December, but in your mind, it's August. And it's probably something you're not gonna realize till you actually get down here, that you're gonna miss putting on a hoodie. You're gonna miss putting on a jacket. You may see pictures of snow from your friends who are still living in the Northeast or up in Chicago, wherever you are, and you're gonna miss it a little bit because after so long, you crave that change a little bit. And number 5, I think this one is really important. for one specific reason, but I want to talk about the critters, I guess you can call them. Obviously, we're in a humid climate. We're going to leave the mosquitoes out of it. We know I'm getting bit as we speak around my ankles. So we're going to leave the mosquitoes out. We're going to leave the lizards out, because you already know that there's lizards and mosquitoes in Florida, and iguanas. The iguanas will not hurt you, but they are invasive. They will eat your garden. So for that reason, a lot of people don't like them. But what I really want to talk about are the things that I discovered when I moved down here, like the flying roaches. And they like to call them palmetto bugs, give them like a nice tropical name. They're flying roaches. It's exactly what they are. And when I first moved down here, my first experience with them was I had come home from, I was showing a condo not far from where I lived. I had no furniture in my apartment. I was getting furniture delivered, so I had to meet City Furniture there. And I go out to my balcony, or I look through the door at my balcony, and I just see a ton of roaches everywhere. I keep seeing more and more, and I look up into the roof of the balcony, and there's a little hole. Maybe not even that big, a small hole. And it was just raining roaches, and they would fall. They were crawling everywhere out there, and then they would just die. And so I didn't go out there. I called the maintenance people from my apartment. I asked them if this was normal in Florida. They said, no. The fact that you have this many roaches out here is not something that's normal. They took care of it. I think by the time, all the roaches were dead, before they swept them up and everything, I think I counted about 65 from inside. I didn't go outside. There was about 65 of them. So that was my first experience with roaches and learning that they fly. Another thing is rats. For all my New York City people, we have rats out here. And I also had experienced this on the same balcony. There was a lot of palm trees that would hang over the balcony, and I guess they're called palm rats. And so I used to keep my dog food in the storage closet outside on the balcony, and I noticed droppings out there. And so again, I called maintenance, and they told me about these things called palm rats that like to hang out in the palm trees, and they're typically found near water. And at the time, I had lived on a marina, so that got taken care of. I moved the dog food inside, and I had never actually seen these rats. I only saw the droppings. But then one time I was taking my dog outside early in the morning, like 5 a.m., and I saw one crawling through the grass, and they're New York City size rats. I mean, bodies this big with the tails this big. They're disgusting. So I didn't know they were out here, but I learned very quickly. Now, the last thing I want to talk about that could save your life, really your dog's life, are these cane toads. And they're not just regular frogs, but they're called cane toads, and they're poisonous to dogs. And if your dog gets a hold of one and it sprays him in the mouth, it could be fatal. And so the thing about them is that they can be very hard to see, especially at nighttime. You have a yard and you let your dog go outside at night, and they can be very hard to see. I got a couple stories about these things. One time I was at one of my friend's houses, and she had, I guess, left the front door open maybe for a couple minutes. I didn't even notice. And this was at an apartment on the third floor. And next thing I know is that there's one of these toads is on the wall, and her dog was jumping up the wall trying to attack it when I noticed it. So I had to take a broom and chase it out because the thing wouldn't move. And then another one of my friends was walking his dog when he was a puppy, and the dog was in front of him. He didn't notice anything, and he saw the dog shaking his head. And when he looked, when he stopped, he noticed the dog had one of those toads in his mouth. He was just a puppy at the time. They had to rush him to the animal hospital, to the ER, and they basically had to scrub his throat down. He survived, but this is something that not a lot of people know about, and it's so simple that your dog can easily get a hold of these things, because you see a lot of frogs out here, but they're not normal frogs. They're called cane toads. So if you have a dog, and you let them outside at nighttime, just maybe keep a close eye on them. Maybe don't really let them outside when you can't see them, because these things are very real and they could be fatal. And I just recently learned that they also do make fences that capture these things before they get into your yard. So that's always an option. But Florida is a very dog-friendly place, and we always want to do what we can to protect our dogs. So if you still think that you want to move here despite those things, my number and email are popping up on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'd love to have a conversation with you to see what I can do to help you, or go to the link in my bio and book a free Zoom call with me directly. I also have a couple of free resources that I just added to my bio, whether it's the home buyer's guide or the relocation guide, because I noticed that a lot of you lately that are watching my videos are already from Florida. So there are people who are leaving Florida, just as many that are coming to Florida. So whether you're relocating to or from Florida, I have that free guide for you in the description. I appreciate you watching as always. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll catch you on the next one.